The Oregon Trail is one of the most iconic routes in American history, symbolizing the brave journey of pioneers who ventured westward in search of new opportunities. But while the Oregon Trail is well known, there are countless fascinating facts and lesser-known details about this historic path that many people may not realize. From the struggles of pioneers to the surprising roles played by Native Americans and explorers, the story of the Oregon Trail is more complex and compelling than you might think. In this video, we'll explore 9 things you may not know about the Oregon Trail, offering a fresh perspective on one of the most important chapters of American history. If you love uncovering the hidden stories behind American history, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more intriguing facts, deep dives into the Old West, and fascinating historical insights. The Oregon Trail didn't follow a single set path. While most emigrants heading to Oregon followed a route that passed through several key landmarks across Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho, and Oregon, the path wasn't a single, well-defined trail. Instead, travelers frequently spread out across vast stretches of land, creating multiple paths through the plains. This was done for a variety of reasons. Pioneers would often scatter to hunt for game, find better grazing land for their livestock, or simply avoid the thick clouds of dust that were stirred up by the wagons ahead of them. The wide dispersal of travelers over such a large area led to the creation of numerous wagon ruts scattered across the landscape. Over time, as the migration continued year after year, settlers found more efficient ways to navigate the expansive terrain. Some entered, prizing individuals and groups began to carve out new routes, often referred to as cutoffs. These alternative trails provided a way for travelers to bypass certain stopping points, shortening their journey to Oregon. Particularly in Wyoming, these cutoffs became increasingly popular as they allowed settlers to avoid the longer stretches of the main trail. These new routes stretched across the region, winding both to the north and south of the primary path, and could extend up to 100 miles. These shorter, quicker routes offered significant advantages to pioneers, but they also presented new challenges. Many of these alternative paths were not as well marked, and navigating them required careful planning and a deep understanding of the terrain. Despite these difficulties, the popularity of the cutoffs speaks to the adaptability and resourcefulness of the settlers. Over time, these alternative routes helped to shape the migration experience, allowing for a faster journey to Oregon, but also changing the course of the United States westward expansion. The iconic Conestoga wagon was rarely used on the Oregon Trail. When we think of the Oregon Trail, many of us picture long lines of Conestoga wagons, with their distinctive boat-shaped bodies slowly rolling across the vast prairies. While the Conestoga wagon was an essential vehicle for trade and transport in the eastern United States, it wasn't suitable for the rugged conditions of the western frontier. These heavy, large wagons, built to carry vast amounts of goods across smoother, more established roads, were too cumbersome for the challenging, uneven terrain of the Oregon Trail. Instead, most pioneers opted for smaller, more agile wagons known as prairie schooners. These wagons earned their name due to the resemblance of their canvas covers to the sails of a ship. Prairie schooners were typically made with a wooden bed that measured about 4 feet wide and 10 feet long, making them significantly more manageable than the bulky Conestogas. Pulled by teams of oxen or mules, these wagons could travel at a pace of about 15 to 20 miles per day, depending on the conditions and the strength of the animals. The use of oxen was particularly popular due to their endurance and ability to withstand the tough conditions of the journey, though mules were also commonly used for their stamina. One remarkable feature of the prairie schooner was its ability to float. The wagons could be caulked with tar to make them waterproof, allowing them to be floated across rivers and streams that were too deep or fast-moving to cross by land. This ability was vital for travelers, as many parts of the trail required crossing multiple water bodies. Despite their practical advantages, prairie schooners had their drawbacks. They could carry over a ton of cargo and passengers, but the ride was notoriously uncomfortable. The lack of suspension systems meant that the wagons bounced and jostled relentlessly over the rough, unpaved trail, making for a bumpy and exhausting journey. Given the harshness of the ride, many pioneers preferred to walk alongside their wagons or ride horses rather than endure the discomfort of being inside the wagon. The wagons themselves were often seen as a necessary but sometimes unpleasant part of the journey. They were essential for transporting supplies, tools, and personal belongings. But the challenges of the trail led settlers to seek other ways to ease the burden of the long journey, whether by walking, riding, or adjusting their travel pace. Despite the discomfort, prairie schooners became a symbol of the westward migration, representing the adaptability of the pioneers who depended on them to reach the Oregon Territory. Indian attacks were relatively rare on the Oregon Trail. Popular portrayals of the Oregon Trail, often seen in dime novels and Hollywood westerns, tend to focus on dramatic, hostile encounters with Plains Indians. However, this was not the greatest threat faced by pioneers heading west. While it's true that many wagon trains formed a protective circle around their wagons at night, this was usually done to prevent their draft animals from straying, rather than to guard against surprise attacks. In reality, Native American tribes were often more likely to be allies and trading partners than enemies. Many pioneer groups relied on the help of Native Americans as guides and allies. For example, the Pawnee and Shoshone tribes frequently assisted settlers by guiding them through the challenging terrain of the trail. These tribes, who had lived in the region for centuries, possessed valuable knowledge of the land and its dangers, making them indispensable to the success of the westward journey. In fact, the relationship between pioneers and Native Americans was often cooperative, with trade goods exchanged and mutual support provided in times of need. While tensions did rise in the years following the Civil War, and some settlers did experience violent confrontations, the numbers were not as high as often suggested. Historical records show that, between 1840 and 1860, only around 400 settlers were killed in attacks by Native Americans. In contrast, the much greater and more persistent threat to pioneers came from diseases, especially cholera. These diseases spread rapidly along the trail, where sanitary conditions were poor and access to medical care was non-existent. It's estimated that cholera, along with other illnesses like dysentery and typhoid fever, was responsible for the vast majority of the approximately 20,000 deaths along the Oregon Trail. The spread of disease was often exacerbated by the conditions on the trail, where large groups of people traveled together in close quarters, sharing water sources and food supplies. Lack of proper medical knowledge or treatments meant that once an outbreak began, it could devastate entire wagon trains before the travelers even realized the severity of the situation. Unlike the dramatic battles against hostile Native American groups that are often depicted in popular culture, the true peril for those heading west was the invisible and relentless spread of illness. It's a sobering reminder that the journey west was not just one of physical endurance, but of survival in the face of multiple, unpredictable threats. Most of the pioneers on the Oregon Trail did not settle in Oregon. Out of the approximately 400,000 immigrants who set out for Oregon between the 1840s and 1860s, only about 80,000 ultimately completed their journey to the Willamette Valley in Oregon. This valley, rich with fertile land and the promise of a new life, became the destination for those who managed to stay on course. However, for many others, the Oregon Trail was not the end of their westward journey. A large portion of the emigrants diverged from the main Oregon Trail at key points in Wyoming or Idaho, choosing alternate routes that led them to different destinations. The majority of these travelers continued south along the California Trail. Over time, the California Trail was followed by an estimated 250,000 settlers, many of whom were driven by the discovery of gold in the Sierra Nevada foothills. The gold rush of 1849 attracted a flood of prospectors eager to seek their fortune, and these settlers contributed to the rapid growth of California's population. The California Trail, with its more direct path to the goldfields, became one of the most traveled routes during this period, helping to fuel California's transformation into a state. Meanwhile, another significant group of immigrants took the route leading to Utah. This trail became particularly well-traveled by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. Seeking religious freedom and a place to build their community, approximately 70,000 Mormon pioneers made their way to the region around Salt Lake City. Under the leadership of Brigham Young, they established a thriving settlement in the valley, which became the heart of Mormon culture and a symbol of perseverance. While the Oregon Trail remains the most iconic route for settlers heading west, The California and Utah trails also played pivotal roles in shaping the American West. These alternative routes helped create distinct migration patterns, with different groups moving for various economic, religious, and social reasons. The branching of the Oregon Trail reflects the complexity of westward expansion, where the promise of opportunity was not a singular path, but a network of roads leading to new lives in different regions. A pair of Protestant missionaries made one of the trail's first wagon crossings. In the early 1800s, frontier explorers and fur trappers forged the rough path that would eventually become the Oregon Trail. However, when it was first laid out, the trail was seen as too arduous and treacherous for families or anyone traveling with covered wagons, especially women and children. The rugged terrain, unpredictable weather, and vast distances made it seem like a journey only the strongest could endure. This perception began to change in 1836, when a newlywed missionary couple, Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, took a small group of wagons from St. Louis to the Walla Walla Valley in present-day Washington state. Their mission was to minister to the Cayuse people, and the journey itself would make history. Narcissa, at just 28 years old, became the first white woman to cross the Rocky Mountains. Her remarkable journey was documented in vivid letters that she sent back home. These letters, which were later published in newspapers across the eastern United States, painted a compelling picture of the hardships and challenges of the trail, but also of the possibility that families could survive the journey. Her personal account helped shatter the misconception that only men and strong, single travelers could undertake the perilous trek. Still, it wasn't until several years later, in 1843, that the migration to Oregon truly began to gain momentum. That year, Marcus Whitman played a key role in leading the first major wagon train, a caravan of approximately 1,000 settlers, along the Oregon Trail. This mass exodus, now known as the Great Migration, marked the beginning of a significant wave of settlers moving westward. The success of the 1843 journey proved to many that the Oregon Trail was navigable by families, and that the dream of reaching Oregon was attainable. The popularity of the trail grew exponentially in the following years. By the late 1840s and into the early 1850s, the number of emigrants traveling along the Oregon Trail surged. Estimates suggest that by this time, as many as 50,000 people were traveling the trail each year, making the Oregon Trail one of the most heavily trafficked routes in American history. The rise in traffic led to the development of infrastructure, more established supply stations, and a growing sense of a unified frontier migration. The successful migration of the Whitmans and the subsequent wave of settlers marked a turning point in the westward expansion, turning the Oregon Trail from a dangerous and uncertain route into a lifeline for thousands of hopeful pioneers seeking new opportunities. This surge in westward movement wasn't just about the pursuit of land, but the promise of a new beginning, one that would help shape the future of the United States. The Oregon Trail had become the central passage for a nation determined to push its boundaries westward. The trail was littered with discarded supplies. As the number of emigrants traveling the Oregon Trail grew, a thriving network of frontier trading posts began to emerge to provide the necessary supplies for the arduous 5-month journey. These posts, located at key points along the trail, became vital hubs where settlers could purchase food, equipment, and other essentials. However, in bustling locations like Independence, Missouri, some merchants took advantage of the increasing demand and the fear many pioneers felt about the unknown. Unscrupulous traders often sold far more provisions than were necessary, preying on the anxiety of settlers worried about their survival on the trail. These overstocked wagons, packed with excessive goods, became a burden rather than a help. The overloading had serious consequences as the journey progressed. As the settlers trudged forward, many sections of the trail became cluttered with discarded supplies, broken equipment, and abandoned wagon parts. Food barrels, often filled with perishables that had spoiled, were frequently left behind, as were tools, cooking utensils, and even personal belongings that no longer seemed worth carrying. The relentless pace of the journey and the harsh conditions caused many pioneers to shed items along the way, contributing to the growing detritus along the trail. In some places, such as Fort Laramie in Wyoming, this accumulation became so significant that the post earned the nickname Camp Sacrifice. It was regarded as a dumping ground for all the things settlers could no longer haul with them. The phenomenon of abandoned goods became especially noticeable during the California Gold Rush of 1849. Thousands of immigrants heading west for the promise of gold left behind their possessions in a rush to reach the gold fields. At Fort Laramie, it was reported that pioneers abandoned a staggering 20,000 pounds of bacon alone, an indication of the vast quantity of goods being discarded. The volume of abandoned items and wrecked wagons created a visual and logistical nightmare, with broken-down prairie schooners and dead draft animals scattered across the landscape. The remains of these journeys, left by those who could no longer carry them, painted a picture of the immense challenges settlers faced and the physical toll the trail took on both people and their belongings. This growing pile of abandoned goods serves as a testament to the harsh reality of the westward migration. The trail, once a symbol of opportunity and adventure, also became a graveyard for failed hopes, damaged wagons, and discarded dreams. One of the trail's most famous pioneers made the crossing by wagon, train, automobile. For most pioneers, a single trip along the Oregon Trail was more than enough to last a lifetime. However, Ezra Meeker, a native of Ohio, embarked on the journey multiple times, using nearly every method of transportation available to him. Meeker's extraordinary adventure began in 1906, when at the age of 76, he decided to retrace the route of his original pioneer journey from 54 years earlier. His motivation was rooted in concern that the significance and history of the Oregon Trail were beginning to fade from public memory. Determined to preserve the legacy of this iconic route, Meeker made numerous stops along the way to share his experiences and educate the public about the trail's history. He delivered lectures on the challenges and triumphs of the pioneers, ensuring that the story of the Oregon Trail would not be forgotten by future generations. Additionally, Meeker took it upon himself to install what he called Meeker markers at important landmarks along the trail. These homemade markers, which he created and placed at key locations, were meant to serve as reminders of the hardships endured by the pioneers and the significance of the Oregon Trail in shaping the United States. Meeker's efforts garnered widespread attention, and his journey turned him into a national sensation. People gathered in large crowds to witness his arrival in major cities, eager to hear firsthand accounts of life on the trail. His journey culminated in a meeting with President Theodore Roosevelt in Washington, D.C., where Meeker's mission to honor the trail and its pioneers received official recognition. This encounter with the president further solidified his status as a historical figure, an advocate for preserving the memory of the Oregon Trail. However, Meeker's adventures didn't stop there. He continued to make the journey several more times, using various modes of transportation. He traveled by wagon, train, and automobile, each time re-experiencing the challenges and rewards of the pioneer journey in a new way. His dedication to retracing the Oregon Trail was fueled by his passion for history and his desire to ensure that the pioneers' sacrifices and achievements would never be forgotten. Meeker's final crossing of the Oregon Trail occurred when he was 94 years old, a testament to his remarkable endurance and commitment. In this final journey, he took to the skies in a biplane flown by the renowned pilot Oakley Kelly, marking a dramatic contrast to the days when he had first traveled the trail by covered wagon. Meeker's journey across the Oregon Trail, spanning decades and multiple modes of transportation, serves as a symbol of how one man's dedication to preserving history can leave a lasting impact on the collective memory of a nation. Pioneers left behind graffiti on register rocks along the trail. In addition to painting messages and personal mottos on the canvas covers of their wagons, pioneers also developed a unique tradition of carving their names, hometowns, and the dates of their passage into the stone landmarks they encountered on their journey westward. These inscriptions served as both a personal record of their travels and a way of marking their place in the larger narrative of westward expansion. It was a symbolic act, marking their presence in the vast and often unforgiving landscape. One of the most famous guest books left behind by pioneers was Independence Rock, a massive 128-foot-tall granite formation located in Wyoming. This natural landmark became known as the Register of the Desert because so many travelers stopped to carve their names and messages into its surface. Situated near the Sweetwater River, the rock was a popular campsite for immigrants traveling along the Oregon Trail, and it became a gathering place where thousands of pioneers left their marks. The carvings range from simple initials and names to more elaborate messages, reflecting the personal experiences and emotions of those who passed by. For some, the journey was so pressing that they didn't have the time or energy to carve their own inscriptions. In these cases, some pioneers paid professional stonecutters a few dollars to etch their names and messages into the rock for them. This practice illustrates both the desire to leave a lasting trace of their journey and the importance of Independence Rock as a cultural landmark for immigrants. Independence Rock was not the only place where pioneers left their signatures. Other sites in Wyoming, such as Register Cliff and Names Hill, also became well known for their inscriptions. These sites, like Independence Rock, offered a place for travelers to pause and mark their passage through the wilderness. Register Cliff, with its impressive 50-foot-high limestone face, and Names Hill, with its more compact but equally significant history of signatures, both played similar roles in preserving the legacy of the immigrants who passed through the region. Today, these sites remain historical treasures, offering a glimpse into the personal experiences of the pioneers who helped shape the American West. The inscriptions left behind are not just names and dates. They are symbols of perseverance, hope, and the quest for a better life. They stand as reminders of the courage and determination of those who braved the unknown in pursuit of opportunity and a new beginning in the West. Wheel ruts from Oregon Trail wagons. By the time the last wagon trains made their final journeys in the 1880s, the Oregon Trail had already left a permanent mark on the American frontier. The constant flow of settlers traveling westward over the decades had a profound impact on the landscape. The repeated passage of thousands of prairie schooners, those iconic covered wagons, wore down the trail in many places, leaving deep, visible ruts in the earth. In some areas, these wagon tracks cut so deeply into the ground that they became permanent features of the terrain, etched into the landscape for all to see. The passage of the wagons not only left physical ruts, but also took a toll on the surrounding environment. The heavy traffic compacted the soil and trampled the natural grasses that had once flourished along the trail. In some sections, the land was so heavily damaged that it could no longer support plant life, creating barren stretches of earth that remain devoid of vegetation to this day. These eroded and worn areas stand as stark reminders of the immense pressure the land endured under the weight of westward migration. The wagon ruts and the scars left on the prairie serve as powerful symbols of the mass migration that shaped the course of American history. Today, these remnants of the Oregon Trail can still be found in all 6 of the states through which the trail passed: Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho, and Oregon. These well-preserved tracks offer a unique opportunity to connect with the past and understand the magnitude of the journey that thousands of pioneers undertook in search of a better life. As we've uncovered these fascinating details about the Oregon Trail, it's clear this rugged journey defined the spirit of the American frontier. From its hidden dangers to its surprising innovations, the trail is more than a route. It's a testament to resilience, ambition, and the pursuit of a dream. Want more captivating tales of the Old West? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for stories that bring history to life, one frontier at a time.